Let's say that you don't have enough money, your bills are piling up, you're really feeling worried, which is your emotional indicator that you're focused differently than the source within you is focused. But let's say, and it is perfectly logical, you're experiencing a financial shortage and you are worried. So that's how you're standing in your physical body. Well, every time you focus upon this shortage, this problem of shortage, you are creating an equivalent solution. And your inner being is holding steady to the vibration of the solution. If we were talking about physical well-being, when your physical body is sick, you create a vibrational wellness that is more than was there before you got sick. In the same way that when you are experiencing exaggerated shortage, you're creating a vibrational equivalent of abundance that is more than it was before you experienced your shortage. So the problem actually, which as it came into focus, actually caused you to bring into focus an equivalent solution to which you do not have access while you are still worried. Your worry, in fact, is your emotional indicator that lets you know you are doing the problem part of the equation while the source within you is doing the solution part of the equation. But you, in your physical form, cannot have access to the solution as long as the problem is what is most active in your vibration. So many people say, well, then show me the money. Inner being, smarty pants that you are, standing over there with all of my abundance, fork it over. Give me the abundance, and when I see it, I will feel better. And we say, of course you would feel better if you could see the solution to your problem, but you have to find the solution to your problem vibrationally before it can manifest. You have to withdraw your attention from the problem before the solution can come into view. So you have something to think about all day, every day. Esther has really been pondering this recently. How much attention to the problem does this particular creative experience deserve? Because there is a tipping point. In other words, of course, poking around on the problem, living life, you came to do that. You came to expand the universe by knowing what you don't want and knowing what you do want. But there is a time, and all of you have to decide when it is for you, that you're willing to say, all right, I've poked around at this problem significantly enough to create a really good solution. Now I think I'll tune myself to the solution rather than to the problem. And the answer to when that is simply this. How much discomfort am I willing to endure before I let go of the problem and let the solution show itself to me? Really, that's the only thing that makes the difference. Now, of course, most people, Esther included, who is standing in the attitude of poking around at the problem, immediately feels the discord of being a vibrational match to the problem rather than to the solution. And then something interesting kicks in for most of you. Because you now don't feel good, it feels like you should explain why you don't feel good and how bad it is that you don't feel good and whose fault it is that you don't feel good. In other words, you begin to justify your discordant relationship with who you are by hammering longer at what's wrong with this. Esther, over the years, has said things to us such as, well, it's true, as if that is any kind of criteria to use. In other words, it's true, this thing I'm using to make myself miserable and keep myself from the solution that I have already created. And we say, no one is questioning the truth of these things because you can't focus upon anything for very long without making it true. That's a terrible criteria. It's true. It's true. And so I focus on it. We say, cancer's true. Do you want some? Plundering, rapes, murder, all true. You want some of that? If you focus upon those things just because they are true, you open yourself to all kinds of things unwanted as well as wanted. We think a different criteria is in order. So rather than saying it's true, why not ask yourself, how does it feel? How does it feel? Because sometimes you can poke around on what you consider to be a problem and it feels interesting. And we want to say to you, we've never said it to you before, that if you are poking in the direction of what feels like a problem and it feels interesting, you're still in the vortex. In other words, if it still feels interesting, you are not separating yourself from who you are. You're working the contrast in a productive way from inside the vortex, because in every particle of the universe, even where we stand in non-physical, there is wanted and unwanted. The difference between where we stand is that the differentiation between our wanted and our unwanted is so slight you could not from your physical platform even perceive it. So really, what we're wanting you to sort of come to an awareness of today, in the time that we are together, is how much grief am I willing to endure for the sake of expansion? And if we were standing in your physical shoes, we would say none. Because you don't have to separate yourself from who you really are and what you want so long that you deprive yourself of the energy of alignment for so long that you are in grief or fear or despair. That's way, way, way overkill for what you intended when you decided to come forth and be a creator in this physical body. Are you understanding what we're getting at? And in the moment that you focus your attention upon what is not wanted, you also simultaneously offer a vibrational rocket that is focused upon what you do want. In other words, you cannot for a moment poke around at a problem, bringing the problem into greater and greater focus. You know how it is. The more you talk about it, the more information you get about it. The bigger it gets, the easier it is to see, the more others join you. In other words, you poke around at a problem, it is going to expand. Law of attraction says that it must. But the good news is, at the same time this problem is expanding, an equivalent solution is expanding too. But you can't set your radio dial frequency to the problem and the solution at the same time. Now, the important thing for you to understand is that when you're focused upon the problem, and of course you are not always focused upon the problem, but let's say you're doing it now, as you're focused upon the problem and the solution is becoming, the non-physical part of you is standing there with the solution. And we are saying that that solution that is now known by the larger part of you is inside this vortex where well-being is gathered, where wanting is gathered, where expansion is understood. So what we're saying to you in a little different words than you've heard us offer to you before is that while you sift through the details of your time-space reality, you cause an expansion of the universe. And the non-physical part of you takes the expansion that you've carved out and holds it steady as the bouncing off place for new ones coming in, and as a sort of guiding light for you to tune your signal to. And the way you tune your signal to it is by feeling for it.